So this is the end result of this video, and this is where we'll be getting to. You see that each button can pass through a different emoji or custom label, and it animates in and out nicely. What's up, guys? I hope you're good. So in this video, I'm going to be building and talking through how I've implemented a custom cursor similar to the one we're looking at here. As you see, as it hovers an interactive element, the pointer animates. So this can be useful to signify to the users that they are over an interactive element, perhaps what they can do. I've seen these implemented badly, and there are a couple of common mistakes that you need to avoid. So yeah, let's dive into the code, shall we? This is the Next.js application. It's the tutorial site that I've been building. So far we have put in a couple of buttons, these animated marquees. Check out my other videos if you want to see how these have been built. So what we want to do is put the custom cursor inside the Next.js layout. We do that so that it's wrapping the entire application. I've created a custom cursor component, and I'll put it in here, and then we can talk through the code. It doesn't actually need to wrap the children, just needs to sit above them. I'm using the @mantine hooks and the useOS helper function, and essentially you're just checking if the user's on a mobile, and if they are on a mobile, then we're not going to mount the cursor because there's JavaScript running in here which that small device doesn't need to concern itself with. So we've checked that it's not iOS, it's not Android, and if it is, we're just going to return null. We then got a full size fixed container which sits on top of everything. You can see that it's up here now, it's appeared. Oh, it's got pointer events none on it, so we won't actually be able to see it, but there it is. Won't be able to touch it. Now inside here, there are a few steps to take. So the pointer itself can be styled however you want. In this case, I've just got a large white dot, but let's take off the background and give it a border like the example one. Okay, and it's currently huge, so let's make it a bit smaller. Okay, so it's up there now. We'll need to add an event listener, and pointer move will then set the cursor X and the cursor Y using the ref that's on it. So GSAP has this quick to function which is useful if you're frequently updating a value or frequently animating it. So yeah, it can boost performance, say in a mouse move event. What we don't want to do, which I've done myself in the past and seen other people do, is set state. If you're setting state here, say by having const cursor position, if you're doing this, what you're doing is 60 frames a second, or however frequently this is being called, you're setting these values, which is then causing this whole component to re-render, and essentially it's just unnecessary because all we need to do is move it. And by using GSAP to animate that, we're doing it outside of the React render. So now we've got an event listener. Let's see if that's working. Yeah. Okay. Nice. We can adjust the delay as well, or the duration in which it takes for our pointer here to catch up. So that's 0.2. Let's just make it extremely noticeable. Yeah, see now it's trailing 1 second behind. The next problem you'll notice is that its top left is at the pointer of the pointer events position, so we need to offset it. We can do that by moving it negative 50% on the X and Y. Let's just make that faster again. Yeah, so now you can see, hopefully, that that is center aligned. Okay, that's cool, that's good. I mean, this is already pretty cool, and as you can see, there's not much code that's gone into it. It's running extremely smoothly. It's not causing React to re-render. It's not setting state. We've got control over how quickly it moves as well, and any other effects. So the next step is attaching it to a button. So let's go back to the page. We have the two buttons here, and what we want to do is pass a value into our cursor that notifies it that the user's hovering something that's interactive. And for this, I've chosen to use a Zustand store. You could set some state in your page or create a context provider. The Zustand store is quite a good fit for this because it's global across the entire application, just like the cursor is, and it will only cause renders inside child components that are subscribed to the value. So for this, again, it's quite performant. The store is it's currently holding a cursor type, which is default. We can add as many different cursor types as we like. If we go back to the example here, see here it looks like they've got a drag type, they've got a previous and a next. They've got a text or label type. For this one, I'm just going to do something silly and maybe just put an emoji type. Actually, let's call it hover, and we'll want to also store something that we're going to show inside of the cursor. So I'm going to create a label as a React node, and then we're going to set the cursor. When we set the cursor, we want to pass in, we want to pass in the type and the label like that. So when the user's pointer enters the button, we'll set the type to hover. and then we'll pass through a label. And then in here, label will default to null. We'll set both those values. Now inside the button, what we need to do is access that store, so that store function. So set cursor, use cursor store, state.set cursor. We want to do this on pointer enter and pointer leave. The label we can do as whatever we want. For now, I'm just going to stick emoji in if I can get one. And then attach these to the button. There's also yeah, that's okay. Now the cursor is reading the type and the label from the cursor store. If we log that now, we should see the type and label change as we hover the button. Yeah, okay, so that's working. Next thing we want to do is set up the actual display of the custom content or the label. So we can see that that's now in there. If we revisit the example, see the ring actually scales up and then the content comes within it, which is quite a nice effect. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the size of it to its enlarged size and then potentially scale it down. I think they're using, they look like they're animating the width of it, which isn't great practice, or unless it's an SVG. Perhaps it is an SVG. I wonder if it's possible to find it. So transforming it, cursor border, yeah. So it's just changing the width and height from 16 to 90. That's fine. I always try to figure out a way to do something without animating the width and height. Let's get the scale. Let's get it growing when we hover. I'm going to start it at scale. Start it at 20%. The issue of this is now it's the border. The border width is also scaled. could fiddle with that endlessly. So let's move on then. The type and label are changing when we hover over our button or interactive element, and that button is calling it using its on pointer enter, pointer leave. The benefit of doing it in Zustand is, as well as performance, that you could have a button 12 levels deep and not have to drill all your props through its parent components. So I'm using the use GSAP hook here. If you're not familiar with it, it's worth checking out the documentation. It basically acts like useEffect, but with cleanup operations built in. So it'll kill animations when the components are mounted, things like that. Let's just do something really simple to begin with. So target the pointer by its ref. We'll do the scale, and we'll do is hovered, type equals hover. If it's hovered, we'll do 2. If it's not, we'll do 1. Put the scale back down again. I think it needs to get bigger. What's the best way to structure this then? I think it might be worth putting the content in a separate, not as a child to the label, not putting that inside here, or at least not putting the bordered element around it. So there'd basically be a moving circle that can expand, and then other content that sits essentially beneath it rather than inside of it, because it's sort of constraining what can be done. So I've centered this rounded circle. And now the label's coming in. Just want the label to be absolute. Yeah, I mean it's pretty whack, but with a bit of fiddling, it could. I wonder if it's worth not actually scaling this outer container, but scaling just the circle. The ring. So we call it the pointer ring. If we scale that by targeting it with its ID, the container has overflow hidden on it. Let's take that off. Yeah, now we're not scaling all of the content, just the ring. this another ID as pointer label. Make the text visible for now. Center it. Emoji has a bit of offset on it. I don't think that's, I think the content is actually aligned, it's just not. There's an immediate flicker of that label coming in. We could potentially remedy that by fading this in and out. So coming in is nice now, it fades in that content. I still think this one's pretty big. And it needs to be scaled larger. The reason it is immediately disappearing rather than fading out like it fades in is because when we are setting the label to null inside the button, it's immediately removing the content from within the cursor. So this is basically setting to null before it's had time to animate out. I'm going to add the label as a dependency, although these two will be set together anyway. So what's happened now is that I've not set the label. Wait, it shouldn't be. Should it be doing that? Yeah, there's an error here. So I'm going to put label as an optional type. What we can write in the store, and this is another benefit of using Zustand, is we can kind of write some custom logic before we set the value. So if the type equals default, right, we're returning to the default one. We'll set the type, well, we know what the type is, set the type to default. And then we'll set a timeout to set the label to null, and this gives it time to hide. Otherwise we'll set the type and the label. Yeah, you see now we can fade in that content. It's obviously happening quite slowly at the moment, but that is a bit of a nicer UX than it abruptly disappearing. Now with this setup, you could customize it however you want by extending the cursor store. You can add different types. You could pass through components if you want, or images, SVGs, or you can simply use the type to determine what the content in the cursor will be. So by that I mean you could have 2 or 3 different types, and then based on what they are, you render a different label or content inside here. I'm going to wrap up the video there because I didn't want to spend too long on this, and we're already 24 minutes in. If you got something from this, appreciate a thumbs up. The code is in the description. I made tidied up a little bit. I'm not quite happy with these this emoji alignment, but I will be publishing this into the main branch when the video goes up. If you haven't, give me a subscribe. I mean a lot, because I'm new to this. I've got a new mic, so hopefully the sound is a little better. In my next video or an upcoming video, we're going to be building a Apple-like image sequence. So like the AirPods Pro header. So when you scroll down, it's going to have some like really nice 3D rendering animated as an image sequence. So that's definitely one to watch. Cool. Happy coding and have a good day.